Hi, my name is Scott Barney, and I have chosen to do my research paper and presentation on the Sarbanes-Oxley Act of 2002. Just as a brief introduction, the Sarbanes-Oxley Act was instituted as a result of the financial scandals of the late 1990s and early 2000s. Basically, the purpose of the act was to improve corporate behavior across the country and also to restore investor confidence in the markets by placing certain restrictions on the audit process. There are differing opinions throughout the country regarding the effectiveness of the Act's provisions. Just as a brief background of the Act, we look to the late 1990s and we see that it was a time of economic prosperity. Many companies were looking very financially sound and very appealing to investors. However, the investors did not know that the success of these companies was being fueled in a large part by false reports and artificial profits. Because of that, many of these companies began to expose fraud one by one, and the government felt that the impact of these fraudulent actions would not be able to be naturally corrected by the free market economy. Therefore, they deemed it necessary to institute certain legislation to ensure sound financial reporting and to establish a consistent ethical standard across the country. The major changes and impacts on business of the Act can be summarized in the first four titles of the Act. Title I created the Public Company Accounting Oversight Board and allowed the board to be able to oversee the audit process, to establish audit rules, and to also enforce the compliance to these rules. The second title of the Act was basically an amendment to the meaning of independence, which imposed additional restrictions of independence between the company and their external auditor. Title III refers to the governance of the audit committee and additional independence restrictions that are in place between the company and their audit committee, and also calls for executive certification of all financial statements. The fourth title has to do with management's assessment of internal control, requires them to submit this report annually, and also the SEC has to do a regular review of financial reports. The feeling regarding the Act is very differing across the country. Some of the positive feelings regarding the Act center around protecting investors and also regaining that investor confidence that the market needs to thrive. Also, many companies are getting a higher quality of information and data because their internal controls are very restricted, and it eliminates the weaknesses there. There have also been significant whistleblower statute amendments that make the protection there more appealing to those who expose the fraud in a company. Another positive that I think is when we look at our country, we see that if we do not have a very perfectly moral and ethical people, we need regulation to be able to protect innocent people and also to retain our liberties that we enjoy. Some of the negative aspects of the Act and negative feelings around the country kind of center around the additional costs that is being imposed on business because of the Act. Also, it's become very difficult for management to oversee internal control because they're having to outsource many of this to larger IT companies, and it makes it more difficult for them to understand internal control and to provide an accurate assessment of internal control. Also, there have been many negative connotations from foreign commentators and also foreign market participants as to the validity of the Act. So basically, to conclude, the Sarbanes-Oxley Act was instituted because of some dishonest and also conspiring businessmen. And it was instituted to kind of regulate the auditing and reporting process to regain investor confidence, and to also establish an ethical standard across the country. There are differing opinions on this, but we can all agree, I think, that some regulation is needed to protect our liberties and to protect innocent investors. This is my presentation on Sarbanes-Oxley Act of 2002, and thank you very much.